just like you would have no perspective if you were given a map of the city of Daytona and your job was to drive from here to there. You need a bigger picture, a map of the United States, low power, large field of view. So that's the anterior, and there's the posterior. Now it does look like classic nervous tissue. You pick out the cell bodies, you can see processes radiating away from the cells. Those, of course, are the axons and dendrites. Okay, getting back to the hormones of the anterior pituitary, the first one listed is FSH. FSH, number 1, goes with LH, number 2, functionally. And they are actually tropic and non-tropic. Recall from Tuesday that the tropic hormones are the ones that are barking the orders. So the example that we've used over and over and over, and so I like to stick with that until we've covered all of them, when the hypothalamus releases TRH, and it just tells the ant pit to release TSH, that's why TRH is tropic. It's not doing anything except telling the ant pit to release TSH. When the ant pit releases TSH is tropic because it's not doing anything except telling the thyroid gland to release thyroxine. So these first two, FSH and LH, they're in the tropic category, but they also have some real functionality, which makes them non-tropic as well. If you read what I've written on the notes for you, it's extremely superficial, and so these take some time to go through. FSH is follicle-stimulating hormone. It stimulates gametogenesis. So that would be oogenesis in females and spermatogenesis in males. Well, there's a lot more to it than that. The name of FSH comes from females, follicle-stimulating hormone. If we look at a coronal ovary, you have to go back once again, we did several times on Tuesday, to your basic biology from 111 or whatever prerequisite class you use, and recall meiosis. In males, a single primordial germ cell undergoes 2 meiotic divisions, and each of those cells undergoes 2 meiotic divisions, and you end up with 4 haploid cells, which become 4 sperm. In other words, meiosis 1, meiosis 2. In males, meiosis starts at puberty and continues until death. In females, remember, things are a little different. In females, the diploid primordial germ cell undergoes the first meiotic division, produces 1 cell and 1 polar body. In meiosis 2, this cell undergoes the second meiotic division, produces 1 cell and 1 polar body. The polar bodies are just the little capsules to contain the extra DNA. It works like this in women because women typically only produce 1 egg per month, or 1 oocyte every 28 days. So we've got a difference in the equalness of the divisions, but the other difference you'll recall from biology is that while in males it starts at puberty and ends at death, in females it starts during embryogenesis and it ends at menopause. Because meiosis starts in women during embryogenesis, a woman is born with all of her eggs. They're certainly not mature, they're not like this, but at birth, a human female has all of the eggs she will ever produce. They are arrested somewhere in the first meiotic division, somewhere between late prophase and early metaphase. They remain in that arrested state until puberty. Then at puberty, once every 28 days, one of the eggs wakes up, so to speak, resumes, completes meiosis 1, begins meiosis 2, and is again arrested somewhere between late prophase and early metaphase, and unless it's fertilized, it never completes the second meiotic division. Back to the coronal ovary. So in the ovary, we have thousands and thousands of eggs, many more than a female would ever need. If you calculate the reproductive time span of a woman. Let's say she starts reproducing or is capable of reproducing, doesn't necessarily start, but let's say she goes through puberty when she's 12 and menopause at 60. So what do we have there? 48 years. 48 years times 12 months. That's how many eggs she needs, but she's got thousands and thousands and thousands of them. So in the ovary, FSH is not really so much stimulating gametogenesis. It is follicle stimulating hormone. What FSH is doing is stimulating development of cells called follicle cells. The follicle cells surround the egg. So FSH is stimulating those follicle cells to proliferate or to divide mitotically. This is time lapse. I don't know why I chose to go in a counterclockwise direction. That seems a little backwards, but I don't guess it matters. So, follicle stimulating hormone. We say superficially, we learn in middle school, stimulates meiosis, stimulates gametogenesis. But that's really so superficial, it is almost invaluable. It is of no value whatsoever. What FSH actually does is stimulate the proliferation of the follicle cells that surround the maturing egg. There must be a reason for that. And the reason is the follicle cells are the unicellular endocrine glands. Unicellular glands, like a goblet cell. Goblet cell is not an endocrine gland, but it's a unicellular gland. As you know, they make mucin. People say the ovaries are endocrine glands. Other people say, no, they're not. The ovaries are just where the endocrine glands live. The endocrine glands are the follicle cells. Well, again, you can argue about it if you want to. I think it's a stupid thing to argue about. But the true endocrine glands, the actual cells that produce the estrogen and testosterone, are the follicle cells. So FSH is stimulating follicular proliferation because we need lots of these follicle cells to make the hormones. As this follicular development increases, there's a cavity or a space formed within the follicle cells, not inside the cells, between the cells. It's filled with fluid. There's a tremendous increase in pressure. And this increase in pressure results in the egg being secreted, not excreted. If it was excreted, it would leave your body. But this increase in pressure results in the egg being secreted from the ovary. And that, of course, is what we call ovulation. this cycle is 28 days. So during the reproductive lifespan of a human female, once every 28 days, the FSH level stimulates this follicular development so that the follicle cells become numerous and the egg is released in what we know as ovulation. So again, to read the notes and say FSH, function, gametogenesis. Yeah, right. Now what do the follicle cells do? Produce estrogen and progesterone, okay? How do we get them to do that? Well, in addition to FSH acting on the ovary, which causes proliferation of the follicle cells, LH is acting on the follicle cells. It kind of boggles the mind if you think about it. It takes FSH to stimulate production of the follicle cells, the unicellular endocrine glands, the glands that make the sex hormones. It takes FSH to stimulate their production, but then it takes LH to tell those cells to make the estrogen and progesterone. So look at what you've written down, think about it, wrap your brain around it, ask a question if you need to. And always, always take that step backwards. So we've got GnRH from the hypothalamus telling the anterior pituitary to make FSH and LH. The anterior pituitary is making FSH, which causes the follicle cells to proliferate. They are the unicellular endocrine glands that make the estrogen and progesterone, but they have to be told by LH to make the estrogen and progesterone. Finally, lastly, the other function to give LH, LH actually stimulates ovulation. And that's on day 14. Now these days I'm giving you, that's a textbook menstrual cycle. There may not be a human female with an exact 28-day cycle. In fact, in a lot of human females, the cycle may vary from month to month, 26 days, 30 days, 29 days, 32 days. But a textbook has a menstrual cycle of exactly 28 days, and ovulation occurs on exactly day 14. Regardless of a human female cycle length, ovulation will be at mid-cycle. So if a human female has a 32-day cycle, ovulation would be on day 16, right around day 16. Interestingly, you can buy kits that measure this LH surge. This LH surge is very pronounced if we look at the cycle. So if someone is either trying to get pregnant or attempting to not get pregnant, they can buy these ovulation predictor kits and measure the LH concentration. The LH surge is so pronounced that it shows up in the urine. So if a human female determined that they had a 32-day cycle, then they would probably ovulate on day 16. If they determined that they had a 28-day cycle, they'd probably ovulate on day 14. If they had a 30-day cycle, they would probably ovulate on day 15. So they could buy some of these kits and look for the LH surge. And the person with the 28-day cycle would use the kit on day